Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, I like to tout myself as a great basketball mind, as you well know and probably agree with. But I am also willing to admit when I was wrong. And miraculously, I was going back in my mind. I think I picked all four of these semifinal series incorrectly.
Yeah, I'm not too far behind. I mean, I had the Suns over Denver, and I did have Milwaukee over Brooklyn. I had Philadelphia beating Atlanta, and in the other series, I thought that Utah would beat the Clippers. So I was 2-2 in the second round series. So I guess that's not as bad as 0-4. But obviously, you were on Brooklyn from mid-March on that they were going to win the championship. And look, they probably would have if not for injuries. I mean, they
I'm not taking a full loss on that one. I'm not going to do it to myself.
Well, so you're going to get the same love that Kevin Durant's getting, right? Because Kevin Durant had 48 points in Game 7. He was magnificent. But he was also 0-6 in the overtime period of Game 7. And I just want to know what the narrative would have been if LeBron James was 0-6 in overtime of Game 7 of a playoff series. I'm sure it would have been just the same as Kevin Durant. Heroic, incredible. He just ran out of gas. If that had been LeBron James, Skip Bayless would have been on Fox Sports 1 this morning saying, see, this is why he isn't Michael Jordan. He couldn't seal the deal. Kevin Durant goes 0-6, including an air ball on his final shot of the season. It's like, what a miracle. He's an incredible player, which he is. Obviously he is. But I think that we still see that there's two separate bars, one for LeBron and one for everybody else in the league. But yeah, these conference semifinal series were certainly intriguing. Look, Brooklyn, if Kyrie Irving doesn't go down and James Harden doesn't have a balky hamstring, they win that series. I don't doubt that in the least. Even with Harden not playing, with Kyrie there, they were in complete control of the series, and then Kyrie sprains his ankle, and Harden, even when he came back and played, was, 40% of himself.
Yeah, if that. It's I like how unpredictable the playoffs have been so far. I think that's really great as a fan and a spectator. And I think we'll talk into as the week goes on in terms of sort of the ramifications for the NBA not having necessarily the marquee teams or marquee stars in the finals. But for now, I think it's great. It's resembled more of the hockey playoffs, which everybody says is the best. That in the NFL, they view as the best playoffs, and so the unpredictability of this has been really fun. We're going to talk a little bit more about that Nets Bucks Game 7 in a minute, but we're going to start with the freshest Game 7, which was last night between the Hawks and the Sixers, where the Hawks really shocked the world because I don't think anybody picked them in this series, and take down Philadelphia at home. And Sap, while I may not have been right about any of the series predictions, I have been proven without a shadow of a doubt dead on accurate about Ben Simmons. And I would like you to take this opportunity now, Sap, to renounce your fandom of Ben Simmons and admit that I was correct and he's not actually that good.
Well, he's only 24 years old, so I'm going to give him a little bit more time. But eventually he's going to have to not only learn how to shoot, but be willing to shoot. That's as big a problem as anything. Jet, in the final 4 games of this series, he did not attempt one shot in the fourth quarter of any of those 4 games. That's 48 minutes
hard to do.
Of not shooting, not taking a single shot. And it was a disaster last night when, he spun off a Gallinari. He's got a dunk at the basket. And instead of just dunking it, he passes it back to Tybal, who got fouled and hit one of 2 free throws. And then after the game, you've got Joel Embiid kind of calling him out on that. He said that was a turning point in the game. Maybe Joel Embiid should look in the mirror. Maybe one of his 8 turnovers last night could have been part of the turning point of that game. And Doc Rivers was asked, is Ben Simmons, a championship caliber point guard? He goes, I don't even know the question. I don't know how to answer it. Both Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid, I think, were just covering their asses after the game. And look, Ben Simmons was reason number one. They did, and he's the biggest reason they lost. But Embiid, as I tweeted out last night, Embiid sometimes comes out full guns a-blazing, and by the third and fourth quarter, he has nothing left because he's not the best conditioned athlete. And how many times do we have to see Doc Rivers blow leads in the postseason, whether it be in the series itself or in games? I mean, this series was lost, I thought, in Game 4 when Philly's up 2-1. Game 4 in Atlanta, they're up 18 in the second half. If they just seal the deal, which is what a good team should do, they'd be up 3-1. They probably win this series in 5 games. Instead, they let the Hawks back in. The Hawks won that game. Game 5 in Philadelphia, they're up 26, the Sixers are. They can't even hold on to that. Then they were able to force a Game 7 with a good performance in Game 6 in Atlanta. And then last night, much of the same. Can't hit free throws. Really crazy possessions, bad defense from Seth Curry. I mean, if we think Steph Curry's bad on defense, Seth is even worse. The Hawks hunted him out, and it paid off for them. They've got a lot of problems in Philadelphia. You know, Jet, the team, I like to make cross-sport references, and sometimes I do it into places that aren't to do with sports. That's why I love Colin Cowherd so much. But aren't the Philadelphia 76ers starting to remind you a little bit of the Pittsburgh Steelers? You know, kind of a loud team, a team that has a lot of promise, a lot of personalities, led by a coach, Doc Rivers, who is somewhat like Mike Tomlin, right? Players tend to like him. I know if I was a player, Doc Rivers would be one of the first coaches I'd want to play for. Same thing if I was in the NFL. I'd love to play for Mike Tomlin. But they're both motivators, but sometimes the small details aren't really buttoned up there. Like, I don't know, free throw shooting, or we see the Steelers a lot of times lose those close games to the Patriots because they think they won the game when they didn't, and a call gets reversed and they're not prepared for the next play. You know, the small details that are so important to winning. That's who they remind me of. And kind of like the Steelers the last decade, they haven't done much. I mean, they had this process in place in 2014, and there's a bunch of teams in the Eastern Conference that have at least gone to an Eastern Conference Finals, including your Celtics 3 times, since the process started in 2014. Heck, the Atlanta Hawks have gone to 2 Eastern Conference Finals during that time with 2 different coaches and 2 different rosters. So it's been a massive disappointment for the 76ers, and Lord knows what they're going to do. Do they blow it up and get rid of Ben Simmons? I know you've been on that for a while, but how do you trade him with that massive contract? He still has 4 years, $146 million left on that deal. And what do you get in return? You're going to probably have to sell him off at 50 cents on the dollar?
Oh, absolutely. His trade value is at an all-time low, which is obviously not the negotiating power you want. If you're a general manager, you don't want to sell at an all-time low. But I don't know how he can't come back. Like you just said, Seb, Embiid and Doc Rivers essentially buried him in their press conferences. The media is burying him today. And listen, he deserves it, obviously. And I think he's the number one reason they lost the series. But anytime you're the 1 seed and you lose to the 5 seed, blame can't just be put on one guy. Embiid obviously deserves some blame. Tobias Harris deserves some blame. Even Seth Curry, as great as he played, because defensively he was terrible. He deserves blame. Doc Rivers deserves a lot of the blame too. So there's plenty of blame to go around. But he's culprit number 1 without a doubt. So I don't know what you get back from him. Before the series started, Sap, I said trade him for Damian Lillard. They make that call to the Blazers right now. The Blazers hang up on them and laugh in their face. I mean, that would be an absurd offer right now.
Right.
So maybe they get
CJ McCollum. Right now, you've got,
but that's a big drop off.
Simmons. Oh God, yeah. I mean, CJ McCollum's a nice player, but I don't think ever played in an All-Star game. Dame is a perennial All-Star MVP candidate. Simmons and Lillard would be an interesting combination in Portland. It's a much more mellow market for Ben Simmons. I'm sure
he's got to rehab his value. He has
to rehab his value. And he's also got to change his game. At some point, you've got to look in the mirror and say, okay, I have to correct what is wrong with me. And maybe he's just not self-aware. And it's not always easy for athletes at that level to start making changes because they look at themselves and say, I've done pretty good so far. He's got 4 years left on a $146 million contract. He's got a brand he's built, whatever the case may be. I guess part of the brand is he sucks at the free throw line. Maybe that's what he sells. But, work on your shot, work on a jump shot, work on free throw shooting, like be more aggressive on the court. He's got a lot of great skills, right? We know he's a terrific defensive player. He can rebound. And last night he still had 13 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, but you've got to get points from your point guard. And you also have to have a point guard willing to take charge in situations. How many times last night it looked like he was playing hot potato with the basketball? There was one play where he had the ball and he just shoveled it to Embiid at center court, and Embiid took it from there and dunked it. Embiid's that talented. But normally that would have been a 2-on-1 where at least you set the play up for an easier play for Embiid rather than have to be Magic Johnson.
Right. Now, obviously, the most notable play of the game is the one Embiid talked about in the press conference and that everybody's talking about today. He had a wide open dunk down on the block and decided to pass it because he's just petrified to even put the ball near the rim. It's not even that I think he needs to work on his jump shot. He needs to work on the confidence in just taking the jump shot. By virtue of him throwing the ball up in the air towards the basket, it will go in a couple of times.
Yeah, sometimes.
He doesn't even do that. I'm just saying, do what Giannis does. Just, say, fuck it, and throw the ball up at the rim. He doesn't do that.
Giannis banks in 3-pointers and then on his way back on defense is laughing about it. Give Giannis credit because Giannis, I think, first of all, he appears to care more than Ben Simmons. That's my other thing with Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons doesn't seem to give a rat's ass.
Does he like basketball? I mean, he's a talented basketball player, but does he love basketball? I'm not going to compare him to these all-time great players like Jordan and Kobe and Bird, Magic, LeBron. Those guys ate, drank, slept basketball. They wanted to get better at basketball. Ben Simmons doesn't appear to be anywhere near that. So is he going to spend the offseason with a sports psychologist if he isn't already? Is he going to work with a shot doctor? I mean, look at Kawhi Leonard. When Kawhi Leonard came into the league, he was not a great shooter. Now Kawhi Leonard has perfect form and is maybe the best mid-range shooter in the sport. My favorite quarterback, my favorite football player, Aaron Rodgers, when he came out of Cal in 2005, he didn't have the release he has now. He has the purest release I've ever seen, he and Dan Marino. He worked on that to get to that level. You're not born with that, so you have to work at it. Ben Simmons, I don't even know if he's taking free throws with his correct hand. Is he left-handed, right-handed? We know Larry Bird was ambidextrous. He was great with either hand. Ben Simmons is ambidextrous. He sucks with both hands. I mean, it's just really, really frustrating.
Yeah, it's Sap, with Simmons, I think, it's baby steps to try to rebuild it at this point. The first thing is just, have the confidence to take it, not even correct the form, just shoot the ball. Don't worry about the form right now. Once he starts being willing to shoot the ball, then you correct the form a little bit. But that's why I'm saying it's a baby step. You got to get him for this point where he looks petrified to even throw the ball at the basket. You got to get him to a point where he's at least willing to shoot. Maybe they should lock him in a room with Russell Westbrook for 48 hours and Westbrook can explain his life philosophy to him and saying, you're paid to play basketball, shoot the basketball. He's like, you're not going to get paid less if you miss. Russell Westbrook, shoots as many times as he seems like he gets paid by the shot. Simmons, he needs a change of scenery, number one. And he needs to start taking these baby steps towards recuperating his value as a basketball player. You can't be looked at as a guy who's a really good passer, rebounder, and defender and making that kind of money. You need to be able to score. I'm not saying he has to be a 25-point-a-game scorer. He's never going to be a 25-point-a-game scorer right now. But right now, he's glorified like Tony Allen. I mean, he's a defensive stopper, but he gets
Bruce Bowen. That's who reminds me of Bruce Bowen.
He's making a max contract. I mean, he's going to be traded, Sap. It sucks for Philly because they're going to have to take a bath on the trade value, and ultimately his trade value, if he goes somewhere else, will probably recuperate. But him and Embiid clearly aren't on the same page. They don't get along. This doesn't work. Embiid needs somebody that can take some of the scoring burden off of him. And so he's going to be traded. And, what we haven't done, Sap, in this whole conversation so far is given the Hawks credit for being the much mentally tougher team than Philadelphia. They were down in the fourth quarter. They fought back and took a lead and won the game. They made timely shots. They played the defense is not their calling card, but they played some damn good defense at the end of the game, poking the ball away from Embiid. Guys like Gallinari, who is, has basically no defensive ability for most of his career, made one of the biggest plays of the game, poking it away from Embiid and slamming it on the other end. And you saw how demonstrative he was on the sideline too. He was motivating the team, saying, we can do this. And I think they believe they can beat. I think they believe they can beat anybody right now. They're playing with the most confidence of any team in basketball. And I mean, Trae Young wasn't very good last night. He was 2 of 11 from 3, and 5 of 23 from the floor. He shot like crap. And the Hawks won the freaking game on the road. So I mean, that's a mentally tough team. When your star player in a game 7 doesn't play well on the road and you're still able to win, that's pretty damn impressive.
And Bogdanovich got hurt as well, so he wasn't able really to contribute. Look, they've bought into whatever Nate McMillan is selling, which is on the defensive end, because Nate McMillan is a player, was a defense-first player. He's been like that as a coach, so he's changed the culture in Atlanta since taking over from Lloyd Pierce midway through the season. Do you realize since he's taken over, the Atlanta Hawks, including the playoffs, are 35-15? That's phenomenal. That if you extrapolate that over an entire season, that's like a 58-win team. That's tremendous. I mean, they've been one of the best teams in basketball since Nate McMillan took over. They can win on the road. They won 3 games in Philadelphia. Jet, last year and this year at home, including the first round of the playoffs, the Philadelphia 76ers were 61-9, I believe. 61-9 at home, and they lost 3 of 4 against Atlanta. And Atlanta won 2 out of 3 at Madison Square Garden. So they're not afraid to go on the road and win. Trae Young, to me, appears to play better on the road than he does at home. He didn't shoot the ball well last night, but he's still able to set up his teammates.
He's still
they
a
came up with
double-double.
the big plays. He does. I mean, he's a phenomenal passer. He's in that gifted passing.
He threw
group.
an alley-oop at the end of the game to Capella that basically went through the eye of a needle. Like it had to be perfect in between a defender. Right. It was unbelievable. He's a very, very, very gifted passer.
He's at the level, I would say the best passers in the league would be LeBron, Luka, Harden. I'd put Trae Young up there. I mean, Westbrook gets a lot of assists, but I don't necessarily think he's a great passer.
Sometimes Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons is a really good passer, but he was so tight last night. He's been so tight through this postseason. As soon as he gets the ball, he gets rid of it, which
he looks miserable on the basketball court.
He does. I mean, he's
miserable.
He generally carries himself that anyway. I mean, I think he's too cool for school. Like he wants to be, not sweating. I'm the cool guy, the good-looking guy. Dated, one of the Kardashians. You compare that to Giannis. So I don't think Giannis is the most skilled guy in the league, but that guy busts his ass. And when he goes to the free throw line, he's consumed with trying to make the free throw. And Giannis did a pretty decent job down the stretch in Game 7 against Brooklyn. There's no question that Giannis cares and will work on his game. With Ben Simmons, it's like, I don't know, I got a $146 million contract over the next 4 years. I'm set for life. I kind of like basketball. I'm 6'11". I'm good at it. I like the trappings that come with it, but I'm okay.
And as you said, in terms of Nate McMillan, a lot of credit goes to him in this series too, and he outcoached Doc Rivers.
He did.
And specifically finding that Seth Curry matchup you talked about, Sap, and Kevin Huerter had, one of the best games of his career. 27 points for Huerter and 7 boards, and just literally one-on-one attacked Seth Curry every single time. And Doc Rivers, for whatever reason, just did not counter, was not even attempting to counter. But Nate McMillan did a great job identifying a matchup and said, hey, my guy, Trae Young, not scoring the ball really effectively tonight. Yep. How can I get somebody else to score the ball? Oh, this guy sucks at defense. I'm going to go right at him every single time.
Yep.
And that's what they did.
Yeah, and you look at the demeanor of the two coaches as well. Nate McMillan in total control. You could tell that the players are buying into what he's selling. Doc Rivers is starting to remind me a little bit of Stan Van Gundy. Like, he's just constantly yelling. Like, even in the huddle, he doesn't seem to be guiding his team anywhere other than just being loud. And he's constantly losing his voice. He's grabbing his head. He just looks bewildered all the time. That doesn't sell well, especially to a young team. I don't picture Doc and Ben Simmons being a good fit. You're right, Jet.
Do you think he's frustrated coaching Ben Simmons, and that's part of it, is that Ben Simmons is an incredibly frustrating player to coach because you see all the potential and you're like, what the hell? Why hasn't this worked
Doc,
out?
though. I mean, Doc had issues with the Clippers, as well. And I would think Kawhi is a lot easier to coach than Ben Simmons. Again, Kawhi doesn't show any emotion, but he's a killer, and he goes out there and will put up the numbers. So, again, Doc Rivers feels like the game's kind of passed him by a little bit, that emotional leader, that maybe that just doesn't sell in the NBA anymore. It just does. The players don't want to hear it.
The pulse I seem to see from Sixers fans is they want him gone now. You can't keep changing coaches every season. I'd give him another year with, whatever they trade Ben Simmons for and see if that works out. Cause I still think he's a good coach. It's,
Did they look any better than they did with Brett Brown, though? I mean, with Brett Brown, this was the same issue. Like, down the stretch of games, imploding. It seemed to be the same thing here. Losing leads, looking,
No, but at least Doc Rivers has, more cachet than Brett Brown because he played in the league. And But
he played in the
yeah,
league.
I
And
get what you're saying.
He had Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo, and and that's good. And I love Doc. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Doc fan. I just think that maybe it's time for him to go into the broadcast booth where he'll be sensational.
Yeah, it very well may be. I would give him another shot with a different chemistry on the roster. The Ben Simmons thing, I think everybody now can agree, it's not working, not going to work. So they need to make a change, and maybe he'll be more comfortable coaching somebody that is, less maddening than Ben Simmons, because he is maddening, Sap. I mean,
man,
to not shoot in the fourth quarter, to shoot. I think I saw, what was the stat I saw? Did he have the worst free throw percentage in the history of the playoffs amongst qualified shooters?
Yeah, 32%.
Holy crap!
That includes like Will Chamberlain, Shaquille O'Neal, who were essentially 50% free throw shooters, but at least they made half of their free throws. He's making a third of his free throws, and he's a point guard. Having a point guard who's frightened of the free throw line is like having a quarterback who doesn't know how to kneel in the victory formation, because that's what it is for a point guard, right? You're going to get fouled, go to the line, hit your free throws, you win the game. It's like a closer being uncomfortable pitching in the ninth inning.
Right. Like a quarterback fumbling when he goes to kneel the ball every time.
See, Joe Pisarcik back in 1978, although the Giants didn't really kneel on that play, they should have. But yeah, you get my point.
Yeah. So there's going to be a big offseason for Philadelphia. Good for the Hawks, because I mean they really had no business winning this series, and they were able to pull it out. And so that puts them up against the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's talk, Sap, about how the Bucks got there in what was one of the best basketball games I've seen. Game 7 between Milwaukee and Brooklyn was, I mean, as tight as you can get. I don't think there was ever more than a 5-point lead at any point in this game. It was just neck and neck from the tip off. And Milwaukee comes out on top against it's fair to say, pretty beleaguered, injured Brooklyn team that was almost carried solely by Kevin Durant. Milwaukee was able to survive by the literal size of Kevin Durant's big toe, because had his toe been behind the line, that game is over. They were able to survive terrible late game execution, terrible coaching in the end of the fourth quarter, and Milwaukee is able to win. But Sap, what were your impressions of this game?
It is probably the best game we've seen this year in the postseason. It was fantastic. It was a matchup of probably the two best teams in the league. We both kind of agreed going into that series, whoever won that series would be the favorite to win the title. Now, if Brooklyn was able to advance, you would expect Kyrie Irving to be back at some point during the Eastern Conference Finals, and you think with a little bit of rest that James Harden would get closer to 60 or 70% rather than 40%. So that felt like Game 7 of the NBA championship. The Bucks are now the favorite to win. I still think Phoenix is going to win, because I think they know how to close games better than Milwaukee, because they have a true point guard and Chris Paul. Milwaukee still struggles at the end of games. They were just fortunate that Brooklyn struggled as well in Game 7. Durant is incredible. We both agree with that. That's not exactly a hot take. What he did over the final 3 games, playing essentially every minute of the contest, just incredible. I mean, the way he was able to take and make big shots throughout, and just the variance in his offense, right? Whether it be 3-point shooting, driving to the basket, going right, going left, mid-range game, in transition. I mean, the guy is absolutely incredible. I think he was just gassed by overtime, which will happen when you play every minute of a 3-game stretch. I mean, you're just going to be out of it. James Harden didn't help. James Harden was 2 for 12 from 3 in the game. I know he's not healthy, but if he could have hit one more 3-pointer, they probably win that game. Joe Harris
was 10 of 10 from the free throw line, though. James
Harden, which is good. I mean,
hunting free throws.
That guy can make free throws, no question about that, as can Durant, and when Kyrie's in there. Joe Harris was abysmal, and Steve Nash he was worse than Mike Budenholzer, because Mike Budenholzer at least advanced to the conference finals. Like, why did Jeff Green play so few minutes in that game? Why didn't Blake Griffin play more? And is there some sort of deal that Joe Harris has to play 40-plus minutes of every game? Because if he's not hitting a shot, what else does he add? He's a great shooter who didn't shoot well down the stretch of this series. Get him off the court, play someone else, play Jeff Green more, make some changes rather than playing essentially 5.5 players for the last 3 games of this series.
I also don't know why. I think had they played Claxton or DeAndre Jordan even a little bit more, just to throw a different look in the paint.
Someone.
But they just kept going with the same, rotation. They're not a big team, obviously, and the Bucks, when they had their head screwed on straight, would just take it to the rim every time and score. Yeah. So why not give Claxton, who's a big young guy, or even DeAndre Jordan, who I know is not nearly the player he used to be, but see if he can do something, anything. Nash did not coach a good game or good series. Budenholzer didn't either. I mean, essentially, he got the last 90 seconds of regulation for the Bucks was painful. It was like watching, the Bataan death march towards them getting, losing. Like seriously, like plays that just didn't even make sense. I don't think they got and there was a 45-second period where they didn't take a good shot. They got the offensive rebound off of like a desperation 3, and then like a shot clock violation or something. And then that play, the out of timeout play where Brook Lopez got trapped in the corner and didn't know how much time there was. I mean, that was an out of timeout play. That wasn't like, okay, let's, we're playing, we ran out of time here. They drew that up. So I don't know what on earth was going on there.
Was that on Brook Lopez, though? I mean, if you come out of the huddle and say, don't forget, we got 2.6 seconds left on the shot clock, so you got to catch it and shoot it. That you don't have time for extra passes.
Yes and no. The thing I would say is they only had 2 seconds left. The worst place to inbound the ball is a corner there. That's the only place you don't want to inbound the ball. It's the only place you can get stuck. So
to your 7-footer. Well,
right, I don't know what the hell that was.
It was only taught by the play they diagrammed at later in regulation when after Durant hit the nearly 3-pointer, which tied it up, somehow Giannis almost broke the shot clock above the backboard on the final attempt. I don't know where they were going with that. I mean, that's not something Giannis.
He should have been the inbounder. He should have been the inbound passer on
that's
there.
That's not his skill set. Go to Middleton at that
awful.
point.
It was a terrible play. These guys were seemingly trying to outcoach themselves to lose. It was not an impressive coaching performance. I mean, obviously Durant was phenomenal and just ran out of gas at the end there. And the overtime period was it was like hysterical. Everybody was so tired. Nobody could hit a shot to save their lives.
Yeah, didn't it feel like the end of a World Cup soccer match? Like, how it gets really sloppy at the end and everybody's exhausted. And
even like the 12th round of a prize fight.
Yeah, because there were 0.3 of a second left, and then they brought the players back on the court, and then was it Lopez hit 2 free throws to make the final 4-point win for Milwaukee. It felt like the end of a soccer match, like Durant was hugging his mother, and it was just kind of bizarre. No, I mean, Kevin Durant is sensational. You've heard me say this a million times. He's the greatest, most varied, most versatile scorer I've ever seen. He's got more ways to put the ball in the basket than anyone I've ever seen. It's damn scary. But I do want to know what the narrative would have been if LeBron had gone 0 for 6 in overtime in Game 7. It would have been a completely different narrative.
It would have been totally different. It would have been Barry. If he had the exact same game as Durant, which I don't know that LeBron could, shoot that efficiently from the
Well, he did in Game 1 of the 2018 Finals. He went 51-8-8. He did score 2 points in overtime, but all I heard from Skip Bayless was that, he gave up in overtime. Not that Durant gave up in overtime. He was just gassed, but the results were not good. Just, again,
no, it'd be different level set.
Yeah,
you're right.
And I accept that as a LeBron guy. And that, look, when you are in the argument as the greatest player ever, which LeBron is, and I think he is the greatest player ever, but, at worst, second behind Michael Jordan, and Durant now is trying to crack the top 10, which I think eventually he can get there. I mean, I can see Kevin Durant surpassing Oscar Robertson as my 10th greatest player of all time. I think he's trending in that direction, although he needs to win probably another title where he's the guy, because even his 2 titles in Golden State, he did win the finals MVP, but he went to Steph's team, and he was the guy in that sense, but it was ready-made for him. This would have been a tremendous feather in his cap if he beat Milwaukee without Kyrie Irving, with a hobble James Harden, and they would go on and win the title. Then he maybe takes the mantle from LeBron James as the greatest player in the NBA. And he may have already done that. Maybe he's already done that, because, I mean, LeBron didn't look great down the stretch, although before he got hurt in March, he was right in contention for MVP. I don't think LeBron is washed up at all. I think the injury derailed his season, like can happen with a 36-year-old guy.
No, and credit to Durant in that, he took a hobbled team further than LeBron took a hobbled team.
Yep.
He was more competitive with these injuries than LeBron was.
Well,
But that's just one.
Durant was playing the Celtics, whereas LeBron was playing.
Well, I'm saying
Phoenix
in this
Suns.
round. In this round.
Yeah, in this round too. Yeah. No, Durant. I mean,
no,
look,
throw the freaking Celtics out of the equation, Seth.
Well, I know you'd like to throw them out of the equation, but they were in the equation.
So I'll tell you a couple things that impressed me in this game. Jrue Holiday did not play well, and then down the stretch, he made some big baskets. So I was very impressed that he was able to shake off. He did not have a good series. He was able to shake that off, and he hit some big buckets for the Bucks down the stretch. He was their go-to scorer down the stretch. So I give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. I also give a lot of credit to Giannis for hitting 8 of 14 free throws. That sounds silly, but you know what? That was the difference in the game. Had he pulled a Ben Simmons, they won by 4, and really they won by 2 because the foul call at the end of the game was kind of silly. But he could have easily missed 2 more, and then you go into double overtime, or he missed 3 more, and you lose the game. So what you're asking for these guys who are bad free throw shooters, Sap, is 50 or better. Just 50 or better.
Get to that, yeah. Because now, if it's hack a Giannis or hack a Ben, and you make 1, it's not a win, but it's not a disaster. It's kind of splitting it down the middle,
no, it's
and
not
at least you get a point.
Which is
Ben Simmons was 4 for 14. At least Giannis was 4 free throws better than Ben Simmons in Game 7. And Giannis did hit 7 out of his last 9. I think he was 1 for his first 5. And from there, he seemed to just, again, I don't think he has a bad-looking shot. I think he's got to cut back his routine. I mean, it's almost like a tennis player who takes forever to serve, and they'll put the clock on him. But I mean, at least he looks like he gives a shit about it, right? Like Ben Simmons just kind of gets the ball and just flips it up there with his wrong hand. I mean, Giannis at least looks like he's trying to get better.
Yeah, so I think you have to have a baseline for these guys who are just bad free throw shooters and say, okay, just don't make it painful for us. If you split them, we'll take it. But Giannis shot slightly better than 50%. Yep. You take it. And that's the difference in the game. In the regular season, okay, you lose this game because postseason you got to hit your free throws at least at a 50% clip. You have to do it. The Sixers lost their series because Ben Simmons couldn't do it. Yep. And the Bucks ultimately won the series because Giannis was able to. Listen, 8 of 14 is not great, but with him, you take it. They won the series. They won the game. That was a big reason why, because he wasn't scared to go to the line. He took 14 freaking free throw attempts because he kept driving the basketball.
And that's 57%. Not great, but it's better than 32%, which is what.
No, it doesn't deserve to be celebrated, but for him, it's the reason they won. If he doesn't shoot him that well, they don't win that game and they don't advance.
That's why I think Phoenix is going to be tough to beat, because at the end of games they're going to hit their free throws. That's simple.
Yeah, Atlanta's a very good.
Atlanta's damn good too, because Trae Young's an outstanding free throw shooter, and you feel comfortable with him there. You just feel comfortable with the ball in his hands. There's a guy who's not going to turtle. I mean, he went 5 for 23. He's like, I'll take another shot if need be, because he feels like his next one's going to go in. Now he's an outstanding shooter, and we know that Simmons is not. But this is fun. A Final Four with teams that don't have much of a history yet. The last time the Atlanta Hawks made it to the NBA Finals was 1961, when they were the St. Louis Hawks. The last time the Bucks were in the NBA Finals was 1974. They lost in 7 games to the Celtics. In fact, the Celtics beat the St. Louis Hawks in 61, the Milwaukee Bucks in 1974. The
Bucks weren't even in the same conference in that year. Then
no, they were in the Western Conference. Phoenix has been to the finals twice. Once in 76, they lost to the Celtics. The point being, the Celtics beat a lot of teams, as did the Lakers over the years, right? The other time the Suns made it was in 93, when Barkley and Kevin Johnson lost a tough 6-game series to Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And the Clippers, this is the first time they've even been in the conference finals. So this is like, who are these teams? This would be like having Jacksonville and Cleveland playing for the AFC Championship, and the Lions and pick another suck team from the NFC facing off in the NFC Championship game. It is kind of fun. I wonder what the ratings are going to look like, because you don't have the Lakers and the Nets, which is what
I was going to say Buccaneers, but not anymore.
No. Wherever Brady goes, there's no suck. But you get my point that this is kind of pretty cool, actually. And someone's legacy is going to be built. Now, the only player left that has championship DNA is Kawhi Leonard, but we don't even know if he's going to play anymore.
Right.
So now you got Giannis trying to build his legacy and Chris Paul. Those are the two guys trying to build their legacy.
It's
Atlanta's
massive
still so
for either
young.
of those guys. If
Both
either of those guys win the championship, it vaults them way higher in their ultimate stratosphere. I mean, we've talked about the Sep, and it got a little bit dinged because we thought that Philadelphia would ultimately be the opponent for Milwaukee or Brooklyn, but it's still, should Milwaukee win, a heck of a path to beat the Heat, who we thought were a pretty good team. Now they took care of them without issue. Then Brooklyn, okay, they have some injuries. Now the Hawks, I thought it maybe was going to be Philadelphia, and then probably, one of the two teams, probably my guess is the Suns, because it doesn't look like Kawhi is going to come back. That's quite a murderer's row that they had to go through.
Yeah, whatever it is, that's what it is. You have to, just beat the team that you're facing. I mean, late in the season, I'm like, man, if LeBron beats Phoenix, Denver, the Clippers, and then Brooklyn, that's going to be his greatest accomplishment. That's so much more difficult than anything Jordan ever faced. That it would maybe put the cherry on top of him being the greatest player ever. It didn't happen.
Sap, you can't, this is what happens. You can't ding teams for getting necessarily lucky, because this is what happens every year in the playoffs. You need to catch breaks. Milwaukee caught a huge break with Kyrie Irving going down and James Harden being less than 50%. The same with the Suns, got a huge break with Anthony Davis going down and LeBron being less than 100%. This happens. You don't win the championship without some luck going your way.
Even Golden State, when they won 3 out of 4 championships in 15, in game 1 of the finals, Kyrie goes down for the series. And even before that, Kevin Love got hurt in the first round. So it was LeBron and Matthew Dellavedova. A little easier to beat than LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love. So Golden State was somewhat fortunate in 2015. Even in Durant's first title, I mean, the Spurs were a true contender that year. They were right there with Golden State record-wise. And they were big in game 1 of the conference finals. And then Kawhi Leonard gets hurt on a cheap shot by Jaja Pachulia. He's out of the series. Golden State goes on and wins that series and then wins the title. And then the next year, a really strong Houston team's up 3-2 over Golden State. Chris Paul gets hurt in game 5, doesn't play game 6 or 7. Houston loses to Golden State. I mean, so you need a little bit help on the way. Like, you go back to 2001 when the Lakers went, 16-1 in the postseason? There was no one remotely close to them. I mean, that was just a absolute butt kicking by the Lakers in every series. And even the following year, they had a game 7, a difficult series against Sacramento, which I believe game 7 went into overtime. And that was that series that Robert Horry hit a buzzer beater in, I believe, game 5 or game 6.
Tim Donaghy series?
Probably, yeah. So there might have been some unnatural money on somebody's side in that series. But normally, every time around, there's, a difficult matchup or you need a little bit of luck. Now, this is what I'll give Michael Jordan credit for. In 6 finals, they never went to a 7th game. There was some close series there. If Karl Malone didn't gag, maybe Utah would have won one of those championships. Or if Charles Smith could just dunk rather than get blocked 3 times by the Bulls, maybe the Knicks win in 1993. So, but you generally don't just see teams sweep through the playoffs. Like, growing up, the 83 Sixers lost 1 game in the postseason. They were just much better than anyone else. And then in 86, the Celtics were clearly the best team, and they didn't have to face the Lakers in the finals. They faced a good, not great Houston Rockets team. So, yeah, you need a little help along the way. Maybe you avoid a team that matches up really well with you, and you slide in, and then the team you're facing gets injured. And look at Brooklyn again. Harden plays 43 seconds in game 1 and then comes back for game 5 and he's not himself. And Kyrie Irving gets hurt in game 4 and is out for the series. So that's a big help for Milwaukee. But you know what? They took advantage of it, and now they're in the conference finals.
No, as a basketball fan, I really like seeing new blood in there. I think it's good for the league. And, there's a lot of talk about, you don't have LeBron or Durant in there. The NBA is going to take a bath on the ratings. Maybe the ratings won't be as good, but I think it's good for the long-term health of the league. They have to prepare for life without LeBron and Durant. Right. LeBron and Durant aren't going to play forever. LeBron is in the finals seemingly every year. You got to build up some new stars eventually. Yep. The league was in the same situation when Jordan was leaving too. Teams, if Jordan's on the finals, the league's going to take a bath. This is the cycle of the NBA. old stars, they get older, they don't appear in the finals as much, they eventually retire, and then a new star takes their place and they market around them. That can't happen if they keep making the finals year after year after year. So the NBA is now going to build up Trae Young. They're building up Devin Booker. They're building up Giannis even more than he's built up. It's good for the league long-term health-wise. Maybe in a vacuum, the finals ratings won't be as good. I still think people will be intrigued because it's new blood in there. But I think for the long term of the league, this is what you want to see: more parity and more players getting ready to take over the mantle when LeBron retires.
In a sense, it feels a little bit like the 70s, in 1978, 1979, back-to-back finals. You had the Seattle Supersonics against the Washington Bullets. I don't think the ratings were all that great. The series were pretty intriguing. In fact, I tweeted out last night that this Atlanta Hawks team reminds me a little bit of the 1978 Seattle Supersonics. They got off to a 5-17 start, fired their head coach, replaced him with Lenny Wilkins, and the Sonics went all the way to the NBA Finals before losing to the Bullets in Game 7, came back the next year and won the championship over Washington. The 70s was unpredictable because, the Celtics won a couple of titles, but there were always new teams in there that made it quite interesting. Ever since, it's been dominated by just a handful of teams, right? I mean, the 80s was the Lakers, the Celtics, a little bit of the Sixers and the Pistons. Jordan essentially dominated the 90s. And then the early 2000s, you had the Lakers and then the Spurs and then wherever LeBron or Steph Curry were playing. So now you've got some teams, as I detailed, teams that haven't been close to this, since I was a kid. The last time the Milwaukee Bucks were in the finals, I was 11 years old. And I was a Celtics fan. They were playing the Celtics in the finals
too, Sab, right? I mean, for different areas where teams Atlanta's had very little history of success, and all these teams. So it brings in new fans too. If you're looking at it and repping on the NBA today saying, man, they're in trouble, no LeBron, no Durant, you're not taking the long-term view of it. This is good for the long-term health of the league to have more parity and to have people seeing new stars. Trae Young should be a household name after this playoff series, and I think he will be. Giannis continues to become more and more popular, and I think people are getting very familiar with Devin Booker. I mean, in Game 1, we're not really going to talk much about that. He was phenomenal in Game 1 of their conference final series. I mean, no Chris Paul. He said, "Okay, I'll just do it myself," and he was fantastic. So it's good to get these young stars more national television time. The league, I think, is in a very good place. I wouldn't be too worried about if the finals one year doesn't have as great of ratings as the last year. I think it's good for the long-term health of the league.
Yeah, because now the offseason becomes even more intriguing because then you get a bunch of teams that are like, okay, maybe we can be the next Atlanta Hawks, right? They tweak the roster, they change coaches midseason, they make the conference finals. Phoenix had gone, 10 straight years without making the postseason, but they drafted well, and then they added a veteran piece in Chris Paul, and I think right now they look like the best team in basketball. So there's different ways to build. That's why I always push back when people said, well, what's Danny Ainge supposed to do with the 14th pick in the first round? I don't know. Devin Booker was the 13th pick in the first round. So was Donovan Mitchell. Kawhi Leonard was the 15th pick in his draft. You can find really good players in the middle of the first round. Sure, it's better to have the third pick rather than the 13th pick, but you can find players there. You just have to do a really good job of drafting them and developing them, something the Celtics haven't done. Yeah, they hit on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, third overall picks in their respective drafts. Congratulations, you did what you were supposed to do. But that's why when people say, oh, you're going to be in no man's land or purgatory forever because you're drafting 13th or 14th, scout better and get players, develop them, and then you can see what happens. I think it's going to be a fun Final Four. And personally, I'm rooting for Milwaukee Phoenix finals because, again, as I said, throughout high school, my two favorite teams were Milwaukee and Phoenix. I thought in 1981, my senior year in high school, that was going to be the finals. It didn't happen. So, 40 years later, maybe it happens. I'll go back to high school.
Once Philadelphia got knocked out, Sap, that was the last team that I just didn't want to win a championship because, Boston, Philadelphia rivalry, and I like to see them sad. I'm happy with any of these teams remaining. I have no problem with any of them winning. I think
the Clippers.
Even the Clippers. I mean, they're like the saddest sack professional team in sports. I mean, literally, I think they have the worst winning percentage of any professional team.
Yeah, it'd be like the Cleveland Browns making the Super Bowl. At that point, you go, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to because I don't think Kawhi Leonard's going to come back. So I'm not.
No,
but yeah, if I had to power rank them, I guess they would be last on my list. But
I'm rooting for. I want to see Phoenix, Milwaukee. I want to see Chris Paul. I mean, I think Atlanta's so young. Maybe they get back here again. I mean, and again, I would think Atlanta can be a free agent destination.
They should.
Probably as much as any other place.
Players love that city, and now that they have a star player and like some juice behind them, a good coach, maybe I would think so.
I mean, we all agree that, L.A., Miami, Brooklyn. I mean, you can't even say the Knicks. They can't really get free agents. Those are the destinations, right? But I would think that Atlanta's not too far behind. So I think can do well. Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee, hey, Aaron Rodgers owes 1% of the Bucks, so maybe he'll get a NBA championship this year after all.
Maybe. It would be nice for him to actually do some winning. So
he's got a Super Bowl already, Jeff.
You took
already
got
a Super Bowl. He's
already got a Super Bowl. The Celtics drafting, which is fairly terrible.
Well, it's true though, isn't it, Jet? Yeah.
It's not.
Well,
not good.
We'll get back at Brady on the golf course on July 6th.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
Aaron Rodgers not participating in camp, but will be golfing and hosting Jeopardy.
Not important.
Sap. So right before we get out, let's just look at these two series and quickly, how many games is it going to take for whoever you think is going to win? Let's start with the Clippers series, which is already they're down 1-0 to Phoenix. I know you have Phoenix. How many games?
5 games. I think it's going to be a quick series.
Oh, wow.
I think. Look, Ty Lue is looked better and better every series. I mean, what a fantastic coach he is, right? I mean, he changes on the fly. He's adaptable. He'll use his entire bench. I love Ty Lue. And look, he won in Cleveland. Yeah, he had LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, and he's won in LA with Paul George and, of course, Kawhi Leonard. I think he's done a great job, but Phoenix just looks like they're on a roll. Once Chris Paul comes back, I think they'll be even that much better. If they take a 2-0 series lead, they're not going to do what Dallas did or what Utah did and not be able to close it out because they are just a better team. They've got better leadership. I think it's going to go 5 games. I think at some point the Clippers will probably just be out of gas because to come back from 2-0 deficits twice, that takes a lot out of you.
If Chris Paul comes back for the next game or for game 3, if he comes, I think they win in 5 also. I agree with you. If he doesn't, I don't seem to have any clarity one way or the other here.
No, we don't.
Then I think it goes. I think that Phoenix still wins, but I think in 6. So Chris Paul, I think, will buy them an extra game. So I agree with you with the caveat of if he doesn't come back, I think it'll take them 1 game longer. As far as the Eastern Conference Finals goes, I got to pick Milwaukee, right? But yet the Hawks are making it hard to pick against them. I will say Milwaukee in 5 games. I think that they are much better than Atlanta, but Atlanta's playing so well. I don't know, but I'm going to go with Milwaukee. I just think matches up really well against them.
I'll go Milwaukee in 6. I think they're going to have obviously trouble with Giannis. Most teams do have trouble with Giannis. I don't think Capella is going to be much of an impediment for Giannis dominating. I also think that they're built with Chris Middleton and more so the rest of their roster. I think they can deal with Trae Young a little bit. They play really good perimeter defense.
Holiday's a great
Drew
defender.
Holiday is a guy who's 6'4" and an outstanding defender. I think he can kind of get in the way of Trae Young for a while. I mean, Trae Young is going to be one of the toughest guys to cover in the league. He's 6'1.5" with an incredible handle and limitless range, and he's a great passer. That pass you described was perfect, the alley-oop to Clint Capella. I mean, that was just a thing of beauty. But I think that Drew Holiday can be the right guy to contain them. I'll say 6 games, though. Atlanta's not going to go down easily. This team is just on a roll right now. And I think, again, Nate McMillan's doing an absolute great job. I would give the coaching edge to Atlanta, Nate McMillan over Mike Budenholzer, who looks like he's lost half the time. Meanwhile, out west, I think it's a great coaching matchup because, again, Ty Lue's sensational, and you know what?
No, I think people were.
I think Monty Williams,
myself included, Sep. I think we're dead wrong about Ty Lue's coaching because LeBron makes the coach look insignificant wherever he
really
goes.
Does. Yeah. Yep.
And I thought Ty Lue was just along for the ride, and perhaps he was in Cleveland, but he's a very good coach. He's a very good coach. I was wrong. He's done a phenomenal job with this Clippers team. All the credit goes to him.
Can it be this? Maybe LeBron's high basketball IQ rubs off on the coach because now Eric Spoelstra is considered a much better coach than we thought. Now Ty Lue. I think it's LeBron. LeBron teaches these coaches
I don't want to hear that.
Coach.
I don't want to hear that.
It's a theory. It's a take.
No, I don't like that theory at all. I know. I think that their high basketball IQ rubbed off on LeBron. He knew nothing, and then they taught him everything.
Well, how about this? Ty Lue sounds like something we'd get at a Chinese restaurant. Ty Lue learn from the mistakes of Doc Rivers because he was his assistant for
it does
many
seem
years.
that way. I buy that. I buy that more
Okay.
than the LeBron.
It's another take.
By the way, I think that part of the reason you're not hearing Sam Cassell as much, especially for the Celtics job, is because he's on Doc Rivers' staff, and Doc Rivers has been so unimpressive in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's like, what's he doing there as an assistant?
Sam Cassell might have to leave to get a job.
Whereas Chauncey Billups is with Ty Lue, and maybe that's going to help his chance to be a head coach sooner.
Yeah. All right, Sap, that's going to do it for us today at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. If you want any updates about the show, make sure you check out our Twitters at JohnSap25, JOHNSAP25, or at JetStrier, JETSTRIAR. If you're not watching already, the YouTube version of the show is youtube.com/JetStrier, and you can find us wherever podcasts are found on iTunes, on Spotify and Spreaker, wherever you want to look. Just type in the full name of the show, the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. And we have no games tonight, but we will be talking more about the games coming forth. And I'm sure there'll be more NBA news, maybe some firings, who the hell knows, before we join you again tomorrow. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see everybody.